hopefully this is on now. Who knows? We will find out. And so now I get to be crazy talking to myself in a vacuum while my wife laughs at me in the background. As she is now. But at least I have a nice cup of tea. And I've got about an hour, I think, of this before the kids are out of school. We live opposite a school, so if you can hear any children screaming in the background, they are from across the road and not actually in the house, despite the fact it might sound like that. I don't really have any structure as to what I'm going to do right now, other than I thought I'd give this a go. This is more for like technical checking, so I'd appreciate any feedback about whether you can actually see or hear what I'm saying. I've got a number of filters and things set up, and I've got a funny boom microphone up here, and apparently people are sending me messages. Yes. Oh, thank you. Somebody's telling me that I'm very quiet. All right. Let me see if I can angle. The problem is I want to be able to see what's going on. I'm also trying not to talk too loudly because I'm aware that I bellow my head off normally when I'm on like VCs and things like that. So thank you for that. So the thing that I've been working on most recently, and it's not very glorious, it's not very exciting, is the installation for all the compilers. So if I Alt-Tab to the right thingamajig over here, you'll see that this is the admin node. So Compiler Explorer runs on an admin node, the Compiler Explorer runs on some actual like compilation nodes, but there is an administrative node, which is some tiny little machine with, what is it, like 16 gig of hard disk space and not even a gig of RAM, which has actually been a bit of a problem, turns out. But this is where all the administration stuff comes from. We have everything mounted in a directory called /Compiler Explorer, so this is where all the compilers are installed. And the installation source for those compilers is mainly tarballs that I have stored myself on S3. So S3 is like a big FTP server that Amazon provide. And they're actually available to anyone. You can go and grab most of the compilers if you don't mind them being written for Ubuntu. But getting them onto the system and making sure they're up to date and working is become a bit of an onerous responsibility. And I have a cron job which runs and installs like the latest nightly releases that I also build and put onto S3 with another process. It keeps going wrong and it's just painful, and I get emails and people ask, why is my compiler not updated? And so I've been trying to take the existing installation system, which I will just show you what it looks like if I can find where the heck they are. Yeah, this is update compilers. It's just a giant bag of thousands of lines of bash. So here's the one that installs C++ compilers, and I mean bash is great, but you know you've written too much bash when you start writing functions that call other functions in bash, and it's horrible. And when it goes wrong, and it's hard to debug, it's hard to diagnose. I don't know which exact thing has caused the problem always, and certainly it stops the currently running shell script, which means that like compilers later on don't necessarily get updated. So I know Python better than I know bash, and I thought I would come up with a alternative, much more checked way of installing these things. And so I now have a configurable installation system which is going to install both compilers and libraries and header files and all those bits and pieces, and is essentially a bespoke installation system using YAML as the back end for, well, not really the back end, just for the data source of what things need to be installed and where. And it would be lovely if I could start again and move all the directories around into nice places and have it make sense, but this project has grown rather organically, and so there's an awful lot of things that don't make sense where they are, but if I had to change them it would be a pain. And so I'm trying to change as little as possible while getting the benefit. So this is what the configuration file looks like. It's sort of a hierarchy of nodes, and essentially once you get to a node in a graph here, this is sort of a graph of hierarchy, sorry, of key values. Where the key is targets, then it's expected to be a list of things that can be installed. And then sort of hierarchically, anything that's defined in a higher level in the hierarchy, those configuration options, so if I scroll down here, hopefully this is readable. I can make the font bigger if needed. I'm going to look over into my screen over there in case. Anything, these become properties that are available to whatever the installer is. And there are different types of installers. The most common one I'm using so far is S3 tarbles, which just knows about where I keep things in S3 and knows to go and get a tar.xz or a tar.gz or whatever and unpack and do the needful things with it. But it can be tweaked and changed by all these different other parameters here. The parameters also support interpolation, so they can refer to other parameters, and that way I can build out strings and have like configurable paths and stuff. But in the very common case, like here are all the GCCs are built in the same way, and they have very straightforward default installation properties. So 4.1.2 target here, the default name is to look for something called, and it's the immediate ancestor's name, GCC dash the target value, this value here, tar.xz, and to unpack and install it in opt compiler explorer, that name. So these guys just work. That's great. So very soon I will be able to add 9.1.0 down here, and we will be able to install GCC 9.1. I haven't built that yet. It's not out yet, despite it looks like it's out on the website, but it's not quite ready. I tried to build it this morning and I discovered that it wasn't ready. We can talk about how the compilers are built perhaps another time, but that GCC is the easy case, and let's just hide them. The cross-compiled versions of GCC are a little bit more complicated and have a little bit more of a flavor of weirdness to them, as cross-compilation typically does. So the spot where they're stored in S3 is not necessarily well named, and some of them are stored on S3, but some of them I actually get from the manufacturer's websites. So those are encoded down here. For example, down here, these ARM none EABI versions are just tarbles, not S3 tarbles. They're tarbles, which means it's just going to go and grab an arbitrary URL and unpack them, and we have to override the compression type. So there's some nastiness there, and of course there's pages and pages of this stuff, and hopefully most of these are straightforward, and they're kind of write once, get it working, it's done. I don't need to do MSP. I have done MSP. Hooray! First actual line of code changed. ARM embedded and DJGPP. So these to-dos that I've got listed at the bottom of the file are things that I intended to continue that came from this shell script. So at the moment I'm really porting over all of the installation instructions from bash to key values inside this YAML file, and the code in the Python side that actually understands and interprets it and then does what needs to be done. Now let me just quickly show you what that looks like if I can alt tab to the right spot. So I actually was installing, just before I started streaming this, all of the nightly compilers, which I've got all the debug information on. So the nightly compilers are ones that are built every night, as the name implies, and they are actually hidden behind a switch so that by default they're not available. And here's my sort of bin CE install. So let me just show you what the actual application looks like. If I just run it by itself, it's going to say, hey, yeah, by default it just lists all of the compilers that are available and known to it. So this is something I intend for people to be able to run locally, so that you too can install all of the compilers that are available publicly. So if you want to run your own local compiler explorer and you also want to have all the compilers available, then you should be able to use this tool to do that. So you can just run install, and then you can give all sorts of flags to sort of you can give like a partial match here. So for example, if I just wanted to install the GCCs, I could just do GCC, but if I wanted to have all the x86 GCCs, I'd do that. And a particular version, I could you could put it in quotes, yeah, 8.3.0 for example. So I'm going to install that now, and it says, hey, you've already got that installed, as indeed I have. Now you do need an awful lot of space in your /opt/compiler explorer, which is where it installs them by default, but I believe that's something that can be overridden. I haven't tested it actually. What better way to test it than to just run it live? Staging dir and dest. Yes. So the staging dir is where it unpacks things into, and then when it's happy that the thing that unpacked is what it wanted, it then moves it into the right location. So that actually, one of the other cooler things we can do, as well as just flat out install a file, is that I can verify. And what verify does is it just installs into the staging directory and then runs a diff to make sure that what it would have installed is exactly the same as what is currently installed. And that's kind of handy because it allows me to test the installation in the live system without actually having to continually reinstall. I don't want to actually reinstall everything all the time, but things like URLs that may have atrophied, I can like run a weekly verify just to make sure that A, I can pull down and in principle install everything, and B, that nothing untoward has happened to the compilers that are living out in the the installation directories. So that's the intention of this. What other things do we have? Oh, yes, it's list install, check installed, and verify the sort of like keywords there. So moving back, what did I say in my to-dos? I've got ARM embedded and DJGPP. And if I just scroll through all of this, here are all of the architecture installed ones. Now, have I done those? I thought I had done those. So let's pick one for example. So previously, this bash thing would go off and get PowerPC 64 8012. And I think that's in here. I'm just going to search for 8012. And indeed, there it is, the 8012, both for PowerPC 64 and PowerPC 64 LE. So I think I did that and just forgot to update the to-do. How often really do comments atrophy, right? Comments are always up to date. Okay, so now we've got the nightly installation here. That was a bit more complicated in the bash. And I think I've got all of those nightly ones covered. So let's look at my nightly. So this has a clause in the condition that says if nightly, which means that this whole set of nodes get cut out unless the -- enable nightly is passed on the command line. And we can see we've got trunk, lock3 contracts, CXX modules trunk. So those are all in there. Those are cool. And then we've got clangs, which I've done, and the nightlies for clang, trunk, concepts, relocatable, and palm. So hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think I did all of those. And there's the Oracle Developer Studio, which is not yet supported. Okay, MSP 430 GCC. I've definitely done those. That was that. And this to do also is wrong. So thankfully, Jason Turner was able to find a new place for these. So for a while, these had died. We had them installed, but we wouldn't have been able to reinstall them if we lost them. And then ISPC. So ISPC is not actually a C compiler, even though it was in the CPP compilers. And I don't know if I listed it in here. So I've actually done ARM embedded. Oh, well, I've listed ISPC here anyway. I guess that's okay. This is just compilers.yaml. So the intention here is that every YAML file in this directory called YAML will be sourced in, so I can break it up arbitrarily into as many YAML files, because your eyes start to glaze over after a while when you're staring at thousands of lines of anything, configuration file or code or anything. So it looks like DJGPP is the only one I'm missing out of this. So yes, there it is. So this chap, I'm just going to have a look, looks like it is coming from an external location. So it's a GitHub build. I like GitHub because it's probably not going to go away, unlike some random SourceForge links up here. And it looks like it unpacks directly into a directory with the relevant name, which is just DJGPP-ver. And here I'm using tar and stripping one component into that directory, which is a trick I used to do, sort of just to rename things from whatever they came out of the tar file. But I think we can do it a different way. Okay, that looks a little bit more complicated. Tag. Oh, That glonk, by the way, is an alert that I'm getting on I'm getting an SMS message which comes up on Google Hangouts, which tells me that Compiler Explorer is adding a new node into the system, which means that there's some load going on. Okay, this is an interesting one because the code here, for whomever, I don't know who added DJGPP. I'm glad to say that I have a lot of people who help and send pull requests, so a lot of this code I'm familiar with but didn't necessarily write. But this is some kind of associative array. That's much cleverer bash knowledge than I have. I don't know anything about associative arrays in bash. But it's a mapping, and it says that these things all live in different subdirectories. So in the new world order, those would be per target fields. Okay, so that's going to be in releases download. That V number, tag is what it's called here. I'll call it tag in the destination. And then it comes out with GCC and then ver, and this is some bash cleverness which is going to change. What is that going to remove? I forget how that works. I might have to do some echoing goodness here. So I am going to take that. Sorry, my Alt Tab is on my secondary screen, which is the one that I'm not sharing, so that if anything embarrassing comes up on that one, hopefully you won't get to see it. So, first of all, I use fish shell, so I'm going to have to go into bash to be able to do bash things. So that is what we were seeing. So I'm going to get rid of the tag ver. This is just purely me experimenting because I don't understand what on earth's going on here. So I just put moo there, just make sure that works. Okay, cool. And ver didn't exist, so I'm going to do env ver equals 1.2.3 echo that. And what did it do? GCC, nothing happened. Oh, I see. This is removing, presumably, a slash, no. All right, that is not what that's doing. To the man page. All right, and, from memory, this is interpolation. Is that it? No, what is it called? Expansion, I think is what we need to search for. Not history expansion, expansion brace expansion. Okay, one of these magical things. Okay, it is dollar parameter and then some other magic. And what are we looking at? We're looking at dollar and then ver slash dot. Oh, I see. The pattern is expanded to produce a pattern just as in place. So that's an empty pattern. And the longest match of pattern against the value is replaced with string. So it looks like it's just putting a dot somewhere. That seems weird. Why am I not seeing anything coming out here? It seems surprising to me. See, I'm not getting anything. All right, back to IntelliJ. Let's go pick up an actual ver. Ver is $1, so it's like 7.2.0. That's what ver is going to be. 7.2.0. Let me not do it with end variables. Let me actually just set it here. 7.2.0 echo dollar ver. Yes, okay, so it's replacing all of the dots with empty space. So it's just 7.2.0 becomes 7.2.0. Why it wasn't working in the other env thing, I don't know, but that's what we're doing. Okay. So this is going to be like 7.2.0, 6.4.0, 5.5.0. Okay, again, I don't think I need to do it this way in the new way. Let's add. So thankfully, IntelliJ here is telling me where I am in my hierarchy. So the fact that my file is far too long is not going to hurt me too much here. But what is going to happen if my keyboard stops responding? There we go. And so this is C++, and this is DJGPP, I think. These don't matter. This is just more for tidiness. And yeah, DJGPP. Ugh. I might as well steal this URL while I'm here. Okay, so DJGPP, this is going to be type tarbles because it's just arbitrary random tarbles on the internets. The check.exe is to be determined. This is a file that the installation script runs to make sure that everything works. The reason I do this is because sometimes there is like a library path thing that needs to be set up, and unless you actually run the compiler with -- version or something like that, version, not version, then you don't know that you haven't actually installed the compiler properly. So that's the intention anyway. So far it's just been nothing but problems, but you know, one tries. There's no S3 path prefix here. The compression was, well, let's put URL in, because that's something I do know. I've got that in my clipboard. So BZ2, BZ2. I've become American in the pronunciation of the letter Z is now Z. Oh, people are now saying, oh. Ah, thank you. People are actually giving me useful comments. Thank you. I should look over them more often. So the person that suggested wrote it. Yes. Cool. Better audio levels. Okay, I will do what I can on that. Oh, hang on a second. I have got some settings that I can make on the other screen, and this is partly why I wanted to do this. I have got a compressor on which should amplify a bit, but I will turn it up a little bit and see if that helps. So apologies if this audio goes absolutely dreadful right now, but I'm trying, and hopefully there we go. All right. Thank you, Andreas. Cool. Oh, well, I'm going to get rid of my to-do now, even though I haven't actually done it yet. But it makes me feel better. Deleting to-dos is always a good thing. I'm also trying to talk quietly because I'm slightly self-conscious, and I know, again, as I said, for those who started here, that my wife is laughing at me behind my back. So this is the URL, and here we need to have a tag. So where we were using a bash variable before, I'm now going to use just a variable which I can set myself. I can have anything I like here. So tag, and this is vir, and this is now going to be, so there's this substitution thing. I'm not going to try and implement this directly. I think I'm just going to write it out longhand. There aren't enough of these to worry about it too much. So I'm just going to say something like name no dots, something like that. And I don't like the way that looks because it's nothing else is camel case like that. That's my sort of default C++. So name no dots dot tar.gz. Okay, so that's the thing it's going to install. And now I'm going to write targets. Now, the way that you saw these before, like this, these guys here, which are just literally a single element on a line, that is the same as me writing name trunk. That's how I've defined it, at least in my schema. So I need to go and grab, what have we got? 720.640.550.494. Brilliant, brilliant. So why don't I? So I have a clipboard. This is what it's for. Let's paste those in and use the magical thing in IntelliJ that lets me do this at once. And reformat it because I almost certainly got it wrong. There we go, that's wrong. And now up here, there are more tags here than there are versions we install, which is interesting. So we've got 550, which is 2.9, 540, which is 2.6. So I'm only going to pick out the ones that we use. I don't think it's worth keeping this extra stuff around. So for, whoops. Oh, I might as well use it while I've still got this big thing on. These all need to become names so that I can actually add extra values and keys for them. The 720 chap, we need to make it, its tag is 720 is v2.8, v2.8, and its name no dots. This is pretty rubbish actually, isn't it? I don't like that. I don't like having to, it's never worth repeating yourself if you can avoid it, but we'll come back to it. If I can come up with a better way of doing that, I will. But I also don't want to add general text parsing trickery into my configuration file. This is one thing where bash is actually shining compared, excuse me. And, oh, sorry, next one is 640, and 640 is 2.7. So we're going to go and do, so tag v 2.7, and thank you, IntelliJ, that's not what I meant at all. And then name no dots is 640. See, I wonder, I'm using, all right, the name no dots thing is annoying me so much now. I'm actually going to go and spend a moment just seeing if I can make it better than that. So I'm using Python 3, and I'm using the dot format syntax here. So if I do foo, I'm going to do foo equals 123. That's what's happening behind the scenes when I'm doing the interpolation of the string. Now, there are ways for this stuff to be general. So what if I did like foo plus 1? No, okay, it's only key errors. So I know that with the F strings in Python, you can do stuff like that, foo plus 1. If I do foo equals 43 here, that. And I wondered if I could leverage the F string format, but I can't. So, all right, that's enough of experimenting on that front for now. So 550 is, which version is he or she? 2.9 or they. Be 2.9, and then the dots becomes last and not least 494. 494 is 2.6 apparently. Crazy array of different things. 494. Hooray. Gosh, well that was more painful than it used to be. Okay, so what we've done now so far is we've been able to construct a URL with a sort of sensible set of things. Well, the only thing that differs is the name, the tag, and the name no dots. And then the name is actually used in the directory name that's going to come out. So we need to tell it what it unpacks to and where we would like it to go to. So we need to tell it what the untar dir is. That's the directory that we're expecting it to untar in. And I'm going to have to cheat and look at the one below. So that's to be D as well. It's always good just to write something. And then dir is where we actually want it to be installed. Now that one I do know. So I'm going to go look back at the installers, and it would be wherever this dir is. And this dir is just DJGPP-ver. Okay, so that's DJ, and ver in this instance is name. So the name of everything is the version. The reason I use name and not version is because some of these things might just be libraries or tools that we're installing. Okay, this is long enough without me actually trying anything out. I hate not knowing where I am. So I'm just going to run bin c install list. And immediately we get to find out that I'm missing a bunch of configuration things, which is nice, hooray. And I spent a little bit of time finessing the error messages. We still get a horrible stack trace, but at least there is some amount of information. Missing compression. Yeah, there we are. So what compression? BZ2, BZ2. I did say it, I had talked about this, didn't I? But I forgot to do it. Story of my life. Hooray. Okay, if we can list them, that means that the configuration has been parsed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list them, and I'm going to do DJGPP, which is a filter, and hopefully we should just see the DJGPP ones. None. Oh, that's because I can't spell DJGPP. Gosh, I'm rubbish. Yay. There they are. Lovely. And now if I run debug, then we get all sorts of logging debug as well, which tells me other things. It's a tarball installable. It's going to install to that directory. That's great. Okay. So the untar dir is the first component. Now, unfortunately, we were using just stripped components over here, which I can do, but I'd rather be more explicit. So I'm just going to leave it as TBD and let the compiler, or rather the output, tell me what's wrong. So let's do install, and it will go off and try and get these things, fetching them. Hooray! Oh, I want to, before I forget, cache. What is my cache thing called? Cache tilde. So I don't do this by default because the caching system that I'm using, so I'm using requests behind the scenes, which is a Python library, which is pretty tremendous. But the cache that it uses naively assumes that when it writes stuff to the cache, if it needs to read them back out of the cache, it can read the whole file into RAM and just serve it to the rest of the program from RAM. These files can be, several gig. And as you saw on the administration node only has 500 meg of RAM. So when I first ran this, it just ran out of RAM and got killed. So, of course, one solution would be to have a slightly bigger administration node, but that would cost more money, and I'm trying not to spend too much more. Okay, so it's now going to install, in fact, this chap. Okay, no cache, looking up. Oh no, this is it still caching the first chap. I should stop calling them chaps. They're not chaps, they're files. Okay, that it's taking longer than I was expecting. One wonders what it's doing. Okay, right. Failed to install under unpacking. TBD was not a directory, which is what we were expecting. So I'm going to have a look at my output. File not found for DGP/TBD -- version, of course. Okay, and I thought that when I had an error of this nature, when it says failed to install under, that I did a directory listing, which was what I was hoping, so that I could just look at it. Now, that didn't work, but I know that it's going to be in staging. Oh, it's just called DJGPP. That would be convenient. If it's just that, I'll take it. So that means the untar dir could be DJGPP. And now what I'll do is I will work out what the check exe is by comparing what Compiler Explorer the application is looking at. So I should explain, all of this stuff that I've been doing is in Compiler Explorer image, which is a separate repo, which is still open source, you can go and grab. It's just not the Compiler Explorer main repo. I have a whole other thingamajig over here, IDE, IntelliJ, whatever it's called. which is got Compiler Explorer in it, and I should go and look at it's c++.amazon.properties over here, and this is just another terrible embarrassment of configuration. Every time I complain about this, but I never do anything about it, and I just keep writing more and more of it. This is the boiled frog all over, as you know, every compiler you add is just 3 more lines. And you always get it wrong at least once. And then before you know it, you've got 3,000 lines of it. All right, what was I going to look for? DJGPP, DJGPP. Here we go. So this is what we're expecting to run. So this directory here is already going to be prepended by the installation system, and it is that bit that we need. And is it the same for each of them? It is. That's joyful. That's joyous. So we move over to the other IDE, and we're going to run -- version, it being G++. I'm assuming that's going to just work. So drum roll, please. At least the fetching should be quick, as it should be in the cache. It's taking a long time to unpack. I guess that's BZ2 for you. If you've ever looked at what the BZ format is, it's really interesting. It uses the Burroughs-Wheeler transform, which is the best I can sort of explain it. It's a kind of sort of reversible sort of the data, and then followed by a regular compression. So you can imagine that once you've sorted data, of course, it's going to compress really, really well. And so BZ2 kind of grabs it in giant blocks of like 2 gig or 1 gig, and then does this reversible sort. It's not quite a sort, obviously, it's a transform, but the transform leaves it in a more compressible state, assumedly. There's some cool visualizations online for how it works. It's fun. All this is for padding. But anyway, look, if we look at the top of the screen up here, we can see here's the output of that DJGPP -- version. So it's looking, fingers crossed, like it's installing, which means that we might just be done with this. And then that's all of the CPP compilers done. And only half an hour of torturous configuration file fiddling. And hopefully enough hard disk space on my laptop. So I'm surprised my laptop's doing as well as it is. It's making quite a bit of noise and it's generating quite a lot of heat, but it is working to compress this video and stream it, as well as do all of this and run multiple copies of the IDE. Might be able to move this a bit closer. You can all probably hear just twanging noises as the what you call it, spring, that's what they're called. Springs in the stand. Twang. Yep, that looks good. All right, 4 packages installed okay, 0 skipped and 0 failed installation. That's awesome. That's worth a commit, right? Let's take a look at what we did. I like to use meld as my general what have I done. And amazingly, it was only configuration that was required. So we were able to check that the MSPs were installed, the compilers were installed, the ARM embedded compilers were all accounted for, and that DJGPP we've just implemented, and it was relatively straightforward. And my need for no extraneous white space needs to be sated, so we'll do that. But everything else looks pretty good. So I'm going to save that off. I'm going to make sure we're good here. Git add dot, git commit -m. Let's remove old to-dos and install DJGPPs. Okay, let's make sure I'm up to date. I don't imagine anyone else has done anything today, and I can just git push that. Hooray! That's pretty exciting, you know. And then just sort of to show how this would work. So here I am now. This is me logged into the administration node, and I'm just going to do a git pull on the administration node, and you can see there's the configuration file that's come down. Now the config node. Just a sort of note, I'm actually logged in here through something called Mosh. Mosh is a terminal emulator that uses a UDP backend, and it does some amount of prediction. And the cool thing about Mosh is that once you've established a connection to a host, it doesn't matter if your IP address changes and port change or anything, the connection can stay up. So I keep a tmux session running all the time, and I just connect into that. And then when I close my laptop lid and I go somewhere else and I go to like Starbucks and I open the lid and I carry on working, it's as if I'm still there. It's just wonderful. Of course, my IP address is roamed all over the place. And that's really cool. And then the fact that it's in a tmux session means that the other Compiler Explorer developers and administrators can also log into it. And sometimes you'll find we end up talking to each other in comment form like this, which is very, very silly. It's the world's worst chat program. But it means that we can sort of explain what we're doing to each other, and anyone else can jump in and see what's going on and make sure. It's extremely primitive, but it works for our use case. So having just done a git pull, we now have those things available. I should be able to check to see whether or not that is good. So now I have to use root access here, and we're going to have to think about that as time goes on, because all these files are owned by root. And I think that's the right thing. I don't know. Probably not. Anyway, for now we have to sudo all of this nonsense. So hopefully somewhere in the fish history is a sudo. So here, for example, here is me running the GCC 9.1.0 build that failed this morning. That's not ready yet. So don't try doing that. And there is... what is it going to be called? Bin? No. There it is, bin c install. So c install, and I'm going to search through. Somewhere in here will be one that actually does it with... I thought I'd run this on this, but maybe it's the sudo that's confusing it. Alright, history, c install. No, alright, clearly I invented that. I'm going mad. So I just have to do this. So there is a source .env bin activate. This needs to be bash -c. It's because I need to run bash as root. Ugh. And I need to run this command, which is to activate the Python environment, which has all the things that we need installed, and then it's going to run ce bin bin c install. Let's just run -- help to make sure I've even got remotely. Hooray! I'm as surprised as you are that I got that right first time. So then we're going to try our DJGPP list DJGPP, make sure we can just see those. And then all I'm interested in doing right now is going to run the verify script, which is just going to prove to me that some other computer, being the one that's actually going to install this, can do the same thing that I did, and this should match with what's already in Compiler Explorer. That way I've developed a bit more confidence that I haven't just installed these things in a new location. So I'll leave that going. And the other thing about screen is that, I haven't got any new, but I can switch between multiple terminals within the screen session. Sorry, tmux, it's not screen. It's the same thing. It's broadly the same thing. How am I doing for time? Okay, I've got about 20 minutes remaining of my planned time. And the only thing really that's stopping me is the fact that my children will be home from school, and then I'll have to do something to amuse them. But that appears to be working so far. So while that's going, I'm going to move that over that side. Let's have a look at some of these other things. So we've basically covered all of install_cpp_compilers.sh. And that's great. That's one of the big ones. That was 3,000 lines of configuration of bash, now replaced with 280 lines of configuration, but a lot more flexibility, a lot more features, things like it will continue if the installation fails, but then report at the end what went wrong, all those kinds of things, all the good stuff that's just going to send me useful emails when this goes wrong. So install compilers is this big run all of the compiler thingamajigs. Oh, they differ. I wonder why they differ. Isn't that fascinating? Of course, diff doesn't tell me very much other than that they differ. And frankly, if it did tell me which bytes they differed in, that wouldn't be very useful either. So before we put this to bed, note what line 290 is in the original. This is something I didn't look at properly, so I'm glad I did this check. This is not going to actually help us all that much. I'm going to stop that. But one of the things that I do is I run strip on the executables and some of the other bits and pieces that go on. So if we go and look at what do strip actually is, I think it's in the world's worst sort of library. Ugh. So the reason I like to strip the executables is that these are all stored on the network, and so the startup and time is how quickly we can read the executables off of the network. And so the smaller the executable is, the better. Now, if it crashes, if the compiler crashes, that is, it's unfortunate because we're not actually going to have the debug symbols, but it does make them substantially smaller and hopefully reduces the size, which means that they're quicker to start and are more responsive to you as a user. So this is built in because it's a common thing I wanted to do. It's built into the compiler's YAML. It's just off by default. So somewhere in here is strip true, and I'm just going to blatantly thieve that from somewhere else and bung it in here. Strip true, make sure it's in the right spot. Excellent. Okay, now every fiber of my being is telling me that really I should test this locally, and because I'm on camera, I will test it locally. But just be aware that this is the kind of thing that normally I might just go, be fine, I'll just check it in. Just like my wife is going. She did her best to not appear on camera at any point, so she's off out right now. Where are we doing? What are we doing? Oh yes, I was going to test this. So let's just run that verify script here. And it's going to tell me, oh no, they're all different. Hopefully, because now I'm going to strip them when they get pulled down locally, and then they will definitely differ because all the binary files that were stripped. Check call. Hang on a second. ISPC. What are you doing ISPC for? Oh, this is a different tab, isn't it? Okay. History, merge. And now what do I want to do? The same thing again, which was verify. Not ISPC. Oh, that's a shame. Why has that gone? I thought that this would have my DJGPP. DJ. There it is. All right, so this is just me proving to myself that I'm not completely barking by running the verify step and proving that it's going to about to fail here, because what it'll do locally is it'll unpack it into that staging directory, then it will strip the executables, and then it will compare that stripped staged directory with the one I previously installed, which wasn't stripped, and it will go, oh no, they're different. Contents match. Well, you see, that's not what I was expecting. Strip true. Yeah, why you no work? Let's go and find out what it's called for real. Okay, so we actually get to see the code, which I suppose I should have showed you rather than just an entire boring bunch of configuration files. So it lives in this bin directory, and the C install thing is just a very tiny run the other thing kind of shim, and here is cinstall.py, which is the real one, and this is the cinstall.py is just the command line arguments and the very top level like loops. Everything else is inside installation.py, and there are even tests. I know, it's shocking. There it is, installation test. It turns out that sort of directory walking, or rather key value pair walking with like a sticky bits of like which things are applied. Oh, my cat's just come in. What's the words? Yeah, with the sort of hierarchy of settings and the interpolation, that was actually more difficult than I thought it was going to be. It's actually not that much code, but it was worth testing. And so what are we going to look for? We're going to look for the tarball installable. That's the S3 tarball installable. Here is the, no, that's nightly installable. Okay. Strip components, self.strip equals content.strip. So it is strip. You see, I thought I might have just what's the word? Oh, I can see why this isn't working. Ha 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 ha. So during the constructor, I read out the configuration object and like pull it into variables that I can, member variables, whatever they're called, fields in Python. And yeah, so self.strip, you can see I carefully read from the configuration file with a default value of false. And then what do I do with it? Nothing. Nothing at all. So I must have missed this out. Now, I wasn't sure when I wrote tarball installable versus S3 tarball installable, I wasn't sure quite how similar they were going to be. They've actually converged quite a bit, so there's probably a bit of refactoring that needs to be done where I can maybe find a common base class, or at least get some commonality in there. But at the moment, it's copy-paste hell, so that is what I'm going to do now. So there it is. If self.strip, self.install context, which is like an object which is shared by everything that provides a whole bunch of useful services, .strip exes. All right, so we fixed that as well. So I'm glad we did this, you see? Always worth checking. Don't just commit these things straight away. Oh, cool. Someone has noticed collections chain map. Yes. Oh, interesting. Thank you, you guys. I'm sorry I wasn't checking the chat. I'm getting carried away talking to myself here like a crazy man. Let me give this a go. So I'm going to take a look at collections.chainmap immediately after this, as I am starting to run out of time. I've just been reminded I actually have got something at the top of the hour. Gosh, I sound like a DJ now. Let's just start doing my back timing. Collections.chainmap and yeah, and Mosh. Mosh is great. Mosh is wonderful. I use it everywhere. It if you actually lose the connection, like if you shut your laptop down and forget, you'll log in and you'll get a message which tells you that, hey, I'm Mosh and I found some other Mosh session that's orphaned. You just have to kill it. There's nothing you can do about it. But it also has some amount of it does. Mosh sort of deltas the screen, a virtual screen on the remote end with the virtual screen that you've got here. So if you've done that ridiculous like tree command that's generated 30 trillion lines of output and you're on a crappy cell phone connection like I often am when I'm commuting in and out of work, work, too soon, it only sends the differences. So if your connection can't keep up, you just get to see just deltas are sent, and it means that like the terabytes of output aren't actually being sent to you. It does mean that you actually need something like tmux, because if you want to scroll back, it has to be done on the server, not locally. But it's pretty cool. All right, what is going on here in the background while I fill for time? Check call. Contents differ. So it's telling me the contents differ, which is great because that's what we're expecting. So now I want to install those. But it'll always, if I just run this as it is, it's just going to say, hey, they're already installed, because it doesn't actually care about them doing exactly the same. But I can tell you, no. Really install them. So this is, I'm more confident now. I think I will treat myself to letting me check this in. So I'm going to make a new terminal for that while that goes off. This one gets a better link. So we're going to say fix stripping of exes for tar type tarball, something like that. And just because I can, I'm going to make it just bin lib installation. Oh, come on, give me a break here. Installation.py. Thank you. And then this is another glonk there. What is that? Is that another thing? Oh yes, it's an alert for Compiler Explorer. What does it say? I guess I could look on my computer, but hang on a second. Let me just get this checked in first. And this is now strip compilers strip DJGPP. So you can tell that if I'd used this before in another tarball executable, it obviously wasn't working. So I should really berate myself for that. So we're going to git push. And I'm going to check on my other screen what that text message was, which was, thank you, Malcolm, again for saying I was super quiet. And this is telling me shrinking. Excellent, good. So we're going down. The number of Compiler Explorer instances has gone down. Yay. I have about 10 minutes left. This seems to be working locally, which is good. I've just committed it anyway. So I'm going to do the git pull on the remote node one more time. And then I'm going to rerun this verify. I'm not expecting it to be the same because the version of strip has changed, and any number of things could have modified about the binaries. So, even if I'd stripped it once yonks ago and used one particular version of strip, we're using a different version of strip now. I'm not even sure that strip is guaranteed to be not even idempotent, was it reproducible in each time? There's a better word than that, and I can't remember what it is. Deterministic, yes. I don't think it's necessarily deterministic, so it's entirely possible we're just going to get a wall of differences again, but at least I think I can square it with myself as to why. And that one completed locally, good. It took 2 minutes. This is a great tip I got from an ex-colleague of mine, Jake McCrory, is you can add like shell history, timing of every command in your shell. Because I don't know about you, but I'm very impatient. Things different. I'm like, that took forever, and then I complain to someone, hey, that took at least 10 minutes. And then if you install something like this, every command you run, and basically I've got a little thing in my fish prompt, which if it took more than like 2 seconds, it outputs how long the last command took. So apparently it took 2 minutes to install. Now, if you'd have asked me to guess how long that took, I'd have easily said 5 minutes. So it's kind of a useful check on oneself. And that seems to be going okay. All right, as we're finishing up, while we're waiting, I will put that back on so we can see the output. And then during the meanwhilest, I will pull this over. So this is me, like, I was originally planning on like looking at doing a feature. Maybe I'll do this the next time I do this, which will probably be on Monday at some point. This is a bug file by the other one of the other major contributors, Ruben, and we've got so coming up in GCC 9 is this new feature for storing fopt info, and it sort of has information about what the compiler did while it was running the optimizer. And so while it was running the optimizer, it kind of goes, hey, I would have loved to have done this. I would love to have inlined here, but I wasn't. So here, for example, it said, I'm considering this, and then I did it. Brilliant. We have a mode for Clang already where it can actually show these hints that Clang outputs in over the code, but we haven't got it for GCC because it's still yet to be out released. So that's something I was going to start looking at as an example feature. There are some big ticket features that I'd really like to implement, but I'm waiting till May before I announce those. My Patreons have already seen what I'm planning for next month, but I have essentially a month off. For those who haven't been following along, my job at my previous company ended on Tuesday, so I have a bit of spare time coming up, and this is why I'm here doing this on a Friday while my kids are at school, and why I'm going to be spending May doing more of these kinds of things and working on some more cool features. So that's pretty much it. We've got like 7 minutes of my time before I have to make a phone call or two, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in and show. There's already a YouTube video that I've like pre-recorded where it's a bit more organized than this random me talking to myself, looking into a camera, hoping that people are listening. But while we're here waiting, can I share my fish config? Yes, I can. I can certainly put that somewhere. I think most people have like the dot files like set up, and I think mine's public, although my mouse pointer is not responding right now. There it is. Let me just go to GitHub. So many repositories. I wonder if my dot files are in here, and if they are, I should check whether I've accidentally checked in anything. There it is, dot files. So yes, so Guy, I think all my dot files in here. Fish functions, is fish shell in here? Fish prompt, there it is. So this is my fish prompt, and the thing that I was talking about is this bit here, lines 86 through 91. So this is on public GitHub, and it is my dot files. So hopefully that is okay for you. And then while we're here, we're going to have a look at EC2 and go and see what the heck's going on with Compiler Explorer while we're waiting. I'm intrigued as to why it scaled up and scaled down a minute ago. So at the moment we've got 4 instances running. And yeah, we can see here are 2 of the so no, this is the one that scaled up and recently scaled out again. So it's terminated, that's gone. We won't be able to look at that one. But prod is currently running on 3 nodes, one of which is just the beta node, which is probably overkill. Here is the admin node that I'm logged into right now, and where are we? Yeah, so that's the admin node. We've got to build a node, which is what I build all the compilers with. That one just starts up and launches itself every day, which I can show you another time if you're interested. And then we've got the 2 production nodes here. One here, the C5 large is one I bid on. It's like an auction-based system, and as the price of spare compute resources go up and down, that can get terminated or comes back in again. But I always have at least one of these mediums running, which is I sort of prepay for, and that's the one that scales up and down actually. So as load comes in, we get more medium nodes coming in. Now there's a question in there. Oh, my .files repo is set to private. Thank you, I will do that. So secondly, I don't re-implement compiler. So Bjord, I apologize for not being able to pronounce your name, Bjord Svensson. Surely you don't re-implement compilers yourself in JavaScript? Absolutely not. No, all Compiler Explorer is doing is executing these compilers that I'm installing. So what you've been watching me do is show how I have take pre-built compilers that I've built myself in the most part, or are available on the internet, and then I'm canonicifying how they get installed into /opt/compiler explorer /giant mounts, and there's like 250 gigabytes or more now of compilers that live in that space in a shared file system. And then Compiler Explorer itself just executes those compilers. It doesn't implement them itself. I haven't rewritten them in any meaningful way. It just literally shells out to those compilers, passes in the right command line flags, and then sucks back the results from those compiler flags and parses them, prettifies them, squirts them back out over a web connection to the client, which is written in JavaScript as well, which then like throws them on the screen. So that's what I'm doing there. I'm not actually implementing it myself. So my .files repo is set to private, and that's probably because it's not a bad default for things like this. I think I'm okay with this though. Let me just go back up. Config. Anything else in here? I think you probably wouldn't mind that. So I will make that public right now, and then I'll just have to remember that it's public. Somewhere down here. Danger. Make it public. Make it public. I understand. Yes, yes, yes. I'm an adult. Dun dun dun. Oh no, you see, that's not my password. You had my password right the first time. Yes, my password is 37 stars in a row. Okay, so that's now public. And I suppose I should put some information here. My public. Oh no, that's tags blast. And this is a list of useful .files. Brackets public. That's more for me than anybody else because I will forget. And one day you'll find one of my AWS keys in there, and then I'll be very, very sorry. So I won't add a readme for there now, but you've seen it. So anyway, there are things that are differing over here in this slot over here. As I said, I'm not surprised particularly that they are differing. It does mean that generally speaking, maybe as time ticks on, I will discover that this verify feature is not as useful as I think it's going to be. But nevertheless, it's a good start when I have so many compilers already up there. So like, for example, let's just do df-h. 338 gigabytes is how much overall everything I've got on the network drive where all these things are stored. And yeah, I started off with everything being in Docker containers, but it turns out having giant Docker containers is more of a pain than an NFS. Ugh. Okay, well, I think I'm all checked in. Yes, I am. And that's pretty much everything done here. I didn't get as much done as I thought I would do, but that's the life of a software engineer, right? You would estimate how long things would take, and then you double it because you know it's always longer than you think, and then it's still always longer than you think. So I hope that was interesting to you. This has certainly been useful in terms of the feedback that I was getting. Thank you, Bjorn. I've just seen your reply about the same password. Yeah. This has been useful for me. Hopefully the sound quality got better as I started to get a bit more outgoing and loud and start talking, and I've moved the microphone a bit closer. I could of course get one of the wee head mic things, but I have this one set up already and I use it for when I do my other YouTube videos. But thank you for tuning in, and if you have any further comments, please DM me on Twitter or email me at my extremely guessable email address, or send me messages in the YouTube. And I think if you subscribe to this, I know that this is what you're supposed to say if you're on YouTube, you know, like and subscribe, all that nonsense. But I think if you subscribe and I decide to do this again, you get like a notification that this is what's going on. And then you can join me again. But thank you for being there. Thank you for those people that were... please don't put your password anyway, even in jest. I'm just reading the chats. Yeah, thank you very much. And now I will try and work out how to turn this off. And you'll see me floundering for the next 10 minutes while I'm like going, oh, where is it? There it is. Oh, no, there it is. I have actually got the thing which will allow me to turn it off. So thank you for watching.